Hello, everyone, to Rhodes College's podcast, The Inside Story. Today, we have a wonderful special guest and alumni of ours. Harj, who are you? What do you do? How do you do it? Go ahead.
Hey, Jameson. So good to connect with you as always. So my name is Harjit Tiara. What do I do? I'm a registered counselor. I've been really loving the field, and I've sort of had my hat in a couple of different places within this industry: coaching, counseling, instructing, facilitating, all that good stuff. So, yeah, I've kind of been exploring a lot of my work in this field.
Incredible to hear. And honestly, you know, funny enough, I've seen your development in the last 3 to 4 years in terms of your coaching experience and now also your counseling experience. If I'm remembering correctly, you originally came to Rhodes Wellness College for coaching and then started your coaching practice and built up clientele there. And then were inspired to go more into counseling as well, or instead. Can you shed light on, what that was like for you and or why you went about it that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I'll go back to 2015 because that was a really pivotal year for me in my healing journey. And I was looking to work with someone that can support me in sort of getting out of getting unstuck in the place that I was in. And I worked with this awesome coach. I really had a big life transformation during 2015, 2016. And I remember in one of our last coaching sessions, I said to her, I'm like, where did you learn to do all of this? Because I have always sort of naturally navigated towards the healing work and the healing field. And I thought, you know what, since she's really supported me and I've really felt the transformation, I think this is a time in my life where I'm ready to step into that myself. And she was a graduate of a school called Rhodes Wellness College. And I started to look more into it. A couple of years later, I ended up enrolling into the coaching program. And I did 6 months part-time. I was able to do it with my best friend. And we just had this really awesome coaching container. And yeah, I graduated from the program. I started working with clients. I really niched down into the work that I was doing. And I realized at the same time that there was this desire to go deeper. And I wanted to sort of go into more of like the trauma of what was happening for that person. And coaching was so powerful because the clients are really getting sort of support right in that process and building out their goals. And I was inspired to come back and take things further with my counseling. So I came back to Rhodes to pursue my PCD in 2020. And yeah, it's been such an incredible journey of just going through the program, exploring all that fun stuff.
Wow. Incredible that you have been through all of that and learned, but also you had a belief in yourself that I heard right when you started saying that. You had a belief in yourself that you thought you could do this as well.
Absolutely.
That right there is really important to acknowledge, I think, for anyone listening, that once you see that you could do this yourself or see that potential reality in your future, then things can start happening,
Mhm.
especially if we take action on it. So I'm curious, Harj, what helped you take action on that belief that you could do that?
Yeah.
What was it inside you that propelled you into that? Because your future was like, hey, I'm over here, and you decided you wanted to go, give that future self a hug and make that reality happen. I'm curious.
Yeah, I love the way that you're saying that because on the one aspect, when I look back at my life from a young age, I knew that I wanted to work in the counseling field because as a teenager, full disclosure, I had worked with counselors in my youth, and I really, really, really loved that feeling of going in and having that support, and that sort of whole the arrows of the environment and the way in which counselors sort of walked through the world. I always admired it. But it wasn't until my later years that I thought, you know what, I could do this. And I think on the one hand, it was a really good coach that I was working with. And when you're working with a really, really talented coach, inspire that belief, right? They will really sort of help you plant those seeds of you can quite literally do anything that it is that you desire. And oh man, it really speaks to the way in which that container kind of opened things up for me. And on the one hand, you can support someone in opening up, but it takes a whole other set of skills to actually pour into somebody and allow them to see what's true and possible for themselves. So on the short answer, that's what I would say really kind of helped me to say, you know what, I can actually take the steps in moving forward. And at the time, I was working at cushiony sort of marketing. I was in a role. I was working in downtown Vancouver. I had this sort of fun aspect to the work that I was doing. And so I didn't necessarily need to leave, but there was a calling that was inspired. There was a deeper knowing of it's time to transition.
It's incredible that you were so brave and willing to lead. I'm just going to pause right here 1 second.
Yeah.
That's amazing that you were able to have the bravery and willingness to really commit to that and believe in yourself that you could do that, even though your life was, stable or cushy and or okay. You knew that there was more out there for you. You wanted to maybe, at least in my experience, help my heart sing more and or mind be more stimulated and or soul be happier with doing something that just gives me that idea of fulfillment and challenge instead of something that feels a little bit stagnant, maybe that you were in, and I know I've been in the past, because this work is ever evolving and allows us to grow personally and professionally in the profession as we go forward in such an interestingly infinite way, because there's always different things we're finding in our lives and or in our clients' lives that we then start to look at our lives like and realize there's more to life, and thus that's growth. So it's really an exciting thing to hear and be about, and it's awesome that you might see things similarly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good reiteration of that whole philosophy of life, right? I remember one point I was working in a sales role for this big company, and I was looking out the window and I saw this view of downtown Vancouver. And I remember feeling in that moment, I want to be out of here and I want to be somewhere out there. And that was the only way I could really understand it at the time, is that I just wanted to be sort of in the world doing something that mattered and doing something that actually was purposeful. And it wasn't about making a big company money, right? It wasn't about putting more money into another person's pockets, but it was actually about bringing more healing into someone's heart. And there was this recognition of like, there's true wealth right there. And the cool thing is like all those skills that we learn in those corporate jobs, they can apply, right? When we build our businesses, when we're, creating our purpose, but the heart has to be there first. And I recognize that's what was missing. And so, that saying we become the student, the teacher appears, it sort of was like that, because here I was just sort of cracked open, really like deep in that healing place in my life, from an emotional and heart-centered place. And boom, here I received the resources of like, here's Rhodes, here's a coach, here's the way, here's the path. And so one step in front of the other, and boom, off to the races we went.
Incredible. What do you, from a nurture and nature standpoint, what do you think happened in your life leading up to the last 5 years? What needed to happen to have you be who you are today and the counselor you are today and the professional you are today? Anything coming to mind in terms of the nurture and nature you experienced?
Yeah, that's a really powerful question, actually, Jameson, because as a child, there was this like intuitive piece that was innate. And I think a lot of us have that. Um, I was blessed to be parented by a mother who was very nurturing of that and kind of brought me alongside her journey and all the things that she navigated emotionally. I kind of was like the sidekick to witnessing, life unfolding for her. And it kind of really put me into like those deep emotional waters of like understanding people and having empathy. It was actually we have quite a beautiful relationship. And as life has continued, she has sort of continued to support me in understanding emotions from a deeper place. And it was in 2020 when my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And again, in some ways, she became the catalyst of going deeper into healing work. And so she's with us today and she's healthy and she's great. But it was that moment in 2020. We've got the pandemic. We've got, a world that is sort of up in disarray. And in the heart of my home, I had this sort of world coming apart. And so within all of that, there's the theme again, right? Of when there's that sort of breakdown, there's that breakthrough. She was both of those things for me. And I had this moment of recognizing that this is the time to take that counseling work, to take myself up on the counseling work that I've wanted to do. If not now, like, I don't know when a better time would be. Right. So yeah, I would say like that was sort of the path, that nurture versus nature kind of experience, that environmentally and emotionally, and in my sort of nurturance as a child, all sort of led up to this moment. And I think a lot of us during the pandemic too, we kind of sat with ourselves to think about, well, what does like life truly mean for me? Like, what do I actually want to create? We had this time and this space that I don't think a lot of us even realized we needed, to actually sit with ourselves and to sit with nature and to explore what actually lights me up. What is it that I want to do with myself going forward? And so that space was all kind of filled in beautifully.
No words. I'm feeling all kinds of ways because you have me think of the uprooting and disruption that I experienced as well during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Similar to yours, in that there was a lot of beneficial disruption. I mean, of course, there was unfortunately many lives lost, and a lot of sickness due to a pandemic. Yet in other people's lives as well, there was a lot of disruption. But metaphorically, I see it as uprooting for me is almost, taking one of those rototillers and going down into a garden and chewing all up, chewing the dirt up that no longer serves the land. Mixing up all the nutrients again to allow new seeds to be planted to root upwards and thrive. And it's almost like metaphorically, the pandemic came in and was the rototiller on so many people's lives and had them have to change. It
Mm-hmm.
almost forced them and gave an opportunity for a change to better themselves or their life, and or have that kind of existential almost realization of like, oh my gosh, the world's in shambles, but what can I do to improve my life moving forward now that maybe I've lost my job, I've lost friends or family to this awful disease, and I could die. So what am I going to do to make this life, really worth it and helpful for me to feel fulfilled in what I do and how I show up? Because I don't want to settle necessarily for what yesterday was. I want to make tomorrow better.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget the mental health crisis was on the rise during that. And it was like, okay, if there's any time to step into this work, it's for sure now. And it just all sort of like this mosaic kind of came together. And there was a lot of us that found each other in that time and supported one another. And yeah, just coming into Rhodes at that time too is like such a lifeline, because there's a lot that was happening at once. And yet here's this cohort of people that all sort of decided to join their calling and hear their calling at the same time. So it was quite an experience in that way.
And interestingly, different people will see people learning during COVID as, oh, you didn't get the education that you could have if there was or wasn't a pandemic. Meanwhile, with Rhodes, the beauty was you were able to learn online in a very interactive and practical way in Zoom sessions, 4.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, to allow that to be an opportunity for you to learn and grow along with, 20 plus like-minded individuals through a worldwide pandemic while learning to become a counselor in a worldwide pandemic when there is a mental health crisis on the rise because people are sitting with themselves at home more, not necessarily being able to go out as safely and having to face themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's this like sort of worldwide trauma that's like all coming through at the same time, and here's these 20 souls that are like, okay, well, let's step into, what emotions are and how we can, so it was quite a bonding experience in those ways too. Yeah, I don't think I would look back and have done it any differently. Like, I don't think I would have gone back because the mindset would have been different, right? I think a lot of us were really having to like uncover ourselves during those years. And I can say that the version of me that existed prior to that would have sort of approached this work a bit differently. There's a lot more empathy that was involved. There was a lot more of building of like unity in that time too, and that can be a challenging thing to do when there's division. And so I think it was a perfect time to come in and say, everyone, like, let's just kind of put it all down and like meet each other.
I love that. That's what it's all about. And I think there being a common dominant theme while you were in the program that there's a pandemic and we need to almost come together more and be there for each other more because of this. That must have been, special.
Yeah,
You're not just connecting on the idea of mental health and helping others, but you're connecting on a whole other worldwide level. We need each other to support each other. So yeah, that's really special, and would have added something unique to your experience, I'm sure. Wow,
absolutely.
amazing. Well, I want to ask you a somewhat different question along the lines of you've been out of school for a few years now, and you have a very successful practice. I'm curious, and I think others would be too. How did you go from having one client to having way more than one client on a somewhat or fully regular basis? What did you do to get yourself out there and say, my name's Harj or Harjit, and I
Mhm.
am a counselor in this way, and this is how you can see me? What did you do to create that opportunity for yourself?
What's really interesting is that it comes back to that belief that we talked about. There was nothing that could have told me any different that I was going to be successful in this work. There could have been nothing or no one that would have said like, hey, it's going to be really difficult to get clients, or it's going to be a lot of work. I don't know what it was at that time, but I was in a place of just like not accepting that as a reality or as a possibility. We obviously also didn't know what was going to happen given the state of the world, and yet I was still super convinced that, well, I'll have a really successful online practice. Like, it's all going to work out and it's all going to be good. And I think also coming in with that marketing background that I had a little bit of experience that I knew that I could fall back on and support myself in building what I wanted to. And with school, especially with Rhodes, the experience of coming to class, diving into the work, like really experiential model, I felt so prepared to step into the world and actually start helping people. Like, I think that had a lot to do with it. I didn't feel like I was floating, that I kind of had to figure out how to do all of this on my own. There was that real experience on a day-to-day level, on a casual Tuesday, right? You're jumping right into some deep stuff with people. And so I think it just got me more fired up and more excited to get out into the work. With that said, I also recognized at that time, like, social media became my main modality of getting my work out. I loved posting while I was in school. As a student, I was sharing little pieces that I was learning. I kind of had people on this journey with me, going into like what was happening in school and what were things that were coming up, little things that I was learning. I was like, oh, let's share this with the world. And I think what happened was, like, during that time, that creative piece really sparked. And next thing you know, social media following started to happen a little bit quicker. People were messaging, and next thing you know, I was like, well, I can't work with you as a counselor because I'm still in school, but I can coach you. And that was the brilliance of having coaching being at the beginning of the program, because then I could actually work with people from a coaching lens. And I found that to be really helpful. It kept me sort of in the flow of things. And marketing almost took a different, it shifted for me. What I knew marketing to be was this very like sales driven, very coming at you, very media based experience, to how can I actually create content or create a sort of amount of work or services that are based off of one, my story, based off of two, things that inspire me, and put those into like a creative outlet. And the people that were meant to connect with me at that time connected with me. And I realized that, oh, this is kind of turning marketing in the way that I know it upside down on its head, right? You don't actually have to like jump out and we talk about this in the marketing course at Rhodes, is that, you know, the traditional marketing has always been kind of in your face. And in our industry, well, if we were to shift that and create alignment, marketing is just going to happen on its own. And so I had that sort of that download and that softening of my approach to marketing, and it just became storytelling. And through that, it's almost like the anti-marketing that was happening in my life at that time, wanting to step away from that world traditionally and just do things that felt more authentic. And again, that was through social media. But it was also through getting out in the world. Like it was, I remember it was in our practicum specifically, the world was opening up and people were starting to miss each other. And this became an opportunity to do more in-person work again. And I took that opportunity and ran with it. Just hosting, you know, circles, hosting events, dropping into ceremony spaces, and allowing sort of the energy to speak for itself. And people just kind of naturally started to come into my corner. So it was a really beautiful unfolding of doing marketing a different way.
Wow. The fact that you've been so brave and open to seeing what can happen tomorrow and knowing that it's so uncertain and you're unsure about it, but you have faith in the process, in the journey, in being authentic and helping people that also are therefore guided to you because of your authenticity, how you show up. They see a side of themselves in you
Mm.
potentially. And therefore that for them might feel like a calling towards you to work with you, and the way that you could work with them and therefore their energy to help it say improve in some way, like
Yeah.
that right there on an authentic deep level from a marketing perspective is amazing. Because you're right, the typical marketing way is, you know, we need this picture, this outcome, this way, and that's the best from the higher ups. When is it even authentic at all to who the people are and maybe what the service or product is?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we another piece to add to that is, you know, when we feel like our back is up against the wall, for like a lack of a better term, at that time, you know, I had a mom that was going through treatment, and I was supporting her and doing my best to kind of be a source of support in that time, but also like navigating like the feelings of what was coming up in that. If anyone listening has ever supported or been a caregiver to a loved one, you'll know that it's such a journey to be on. And in that time being in school, one, school became the outlet, but it was also the purpose. I'm like, you know, for clients, even like when your back is up against the wall, sometimes you feel like that's when you sort of step into some of your deepest healing work. You step into some of the things that like really matter to you in life. And all of my energy just got channeled into creating the work that I wanted to do. So I'd say that actually had a part in it too.
yeah, absolutely it did. And you just being who you are without doubting that person, and therefore being so sure in yourself for who you are. And I'm curious, you know, was it coaching or counseling, your upbringing that led to you being so sure of yourself? What was it that made you so sure of like who you are and that you can go out there and be okay no matter how you show up and that you have faith that clients will come?
Yeah, that's a really good question. To some degree, there's a little bit of all of it, right? I think that our life, when we look at the points that sort of make, the direction that we go, and we look at all the things that led up to it, there's not even just one specific thing that does it. It's a little bit of everything. It's like these events, people you meet. It's these sort of ricochet of things that lead you there. If I was to sort of go back into that journey though, and really kind of pull out the chunk that really kind of drove home the fact that success is so possible, I would say coaching was coaching really planted the seed, and it opened up the world to me, because at the time when I took my first the coaching course in 2018, there was also a whole like industry of coaches that were emerging at that time and showing up in the online space. So I also feel part of it was timing, and seeing that other people are really killing it in this field. And then at the same time, being trained to be a coach. And yeah, it was, I think coaching was like a really big piece in that. And the way in which, when you're a really well trained coach, there is such high positive regards that you have for an individual that you're supporting and serving. But the beauty of the training that we were doing is that not only were we learning to do that for people, we were also opening up ourselves to be that client and receiving that, right? And that's why I think that experiential model is so key when it comes to like learning anything that has to do with the human experience. Because how can you genuinely show up and hold space for another person if you have not been cracked open and met your edges, right? And coaching was just like, oh my gosh, it opened up everything at that time.
So you were so okay with being cracked totally open in through the end of coaching into then helping others. And thus that allowed you to help others feel fully cracked open to talk about their spots that they want to work on to
Absolutely.
move forward better, which is coaching, at least in the Rhodes way of helping people in the present moment move forward, to then the counseling side, which you obviously saw great value in, to bring up, okay, what has happened in the past that makes you who you are today, that you want to talk about, actually feel from because maybe you haven't, etc. So, wow, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sort of phrasing it in that way. In neatly kind of like packing that in that way, because it reminds me of that whole philosophy of, if I can't if we as facilitators and coaches can't actually like believe in ourselves or see that for ourselves, it's not authentic, right? When we show up for our clients. And so it really has to be practiced before it's preached. And that's a really big philosophy, I think is,
Yeah.
and of course, like, as a coach, as a counselor, I'm like by no means claiming that there's like I have awareness, but not perfect by any means. Like I have days, Jameson, where things are just so the opposite of coaching and counseling, right? Where things feel heavy, and it's like we don't always have those tools ourselves, but at least we have the belief that the next day is going to be better, and we sort of pick up and we keep going, right?
Mm. And with that willingness to talk about your own issues with your own counselors, coaches, healers, helpers, etc., you do prevent that transference between you and your client. And when they're talking about something, you're not crying with them, you're holding that space to help them feel things out.
Absolutely. Yeah, the co-regulation, because like if you as a facilitator need to be regulated in that moment, it's going to be really hard to connect to your client's healing. So it was I think it was B Rhodes. She's an instructor in one of the courses, and I remember her like really bringing that point home of your self-care is going to be so important outside of this work. And that is just like, it was so embedded, and it rings so true.
I totally agree. I speak to some counselors that are like, I don't take more than 2 clients a day. I go on 4 walks a day. I do my meditations and my yoga and all the things. And I see 2 clients a day and I love it. And I'm like, that's awesome. Good for you. Meanwhile, some others are more regimented in, 5 clients a day.
Yeah.
And this type of structure, and the beauty of the work is, and with being potentially your own boss in your own practice, is you can design your schedule to an extent to help you get the self-care that you need to show up well for not only you, but therefore your client as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's super key. And if you become a student or you're a current student or graduate, self-care is number one, so you can show up for you and or others. So it's cool stuff. Awesome. So I have some questions for you here as well, Harj, that I think might be interesting for you to answer. In the next, say, 6 months or a year within your own practice, what are you working on now, and or what are your goals within it to help it continue to grow and prosper?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. There's a shift that's happening in my worlds right now. And so currently I'm working at 2 private practices. I'm contracted as a counselor, and it's just been like the most incredible work and people that I've been supporting. And I'm shifting my work, not leaving the one-on-one worlds, definitely still maintaining that, but starting to actually shift into more holistic care that is additional to counseling support. So wellness-based, content, wellness-based event spaces, ceremonial spaces, and different structure, and bringing more spirit and consciousness into that space of holistic wellness from a really responsible way, a way that people can really connect to on a soulful level. So One Truth Wellness is the organization that I am building, and really sort of loving the process of the growth that's happening within my own body and soul, and now wanting to support clients in that work too. And some of that will also be, my work really started off more general, supporting people through life transitions, supporting people that were, navigating changes that were happening for them. And then my work shifted into working with people that were discovering themselves culturally, because a lot of the clients that I was working with came from a Southeast Asian background, South Asian background, and there is this desire to grow in bringing the East and the West sort of cultures together. So I work with a lot of people that are in those discovery phases of their life. And now the work is shifting into more relationship type work. So building relationships, I used to do work it's so fascinating how this all comes full circle, because I used to do work in supporting people in the ending of their relationships and the breakup process. And now through my own lived experiences, but also like professionally, I'm stepping into the work in supporting people in how to stay and maintain healthy relationships. And that's through the work of the Gottmans and the training that they have accessible. And so bringing some of that work around relationships and holistic care into One Truth Wellness.
That's very exciting, and how things constantly seem to come full circle eventually.
Absolutely. Yeah. As long as you continue to grow and you continue to have that belief in yourself, your business will not be the same from when you start to, a few years in. And it shouldn't. It should always be growing with you.
I totally agree. I often don't ever call it a practice for no reason,
Yeah.
because it's just a constant practice.
Totally. Yeah, I'm with you.
So the more we, look at ourselves and how we even more so want to show up authentically in the world and help others, the better.
Yeah.
Is it, many lawyers, many counselors, many accountants, we continue to grow and specialize and jump into different things that give us more passion or joy or fulfillment, or speak to something maybe inside of us that we've experienced or feel like we want to help more in. It's really interesting in how that happens for humans. It's just so compelling. I just want to know, like, why everyone does what they do.
Yeah. It's an age old question, right?
It is. It's just like, how and why, if my belief is accurate in that we're a soul living a human experience in this body and we're meeting ourselves today, which is saying a lot. why are we in this moment, at this point, in this second, connecting in this way? What has happened and transpired? We can start to kind of collect it and think about it briefly, but there's like a billion things that has happened to lead you and me for this moment and anyone listening to this exact point.
Yeah. Yes.
Wild.
So what, like every millisecond of time matters, right? It all sort of it all sort of adds up to where we are, and we can't always look at one specific moment and be like, that's why, because the moment before that had to matter too, right? So it's this whole human experience is quite fascinating, and I always just think, that one step in front of the other, and then take a pause and look around you and enjoy what's happening, and then take the next step and sort of go about it that way and really just enjoy that process. Oh man, it's everything.
I totally agree. And something in life in general is the idea of it just enjoying the moment. The moment is all we have, arguably, the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, great book. If we can just look at the moment and stay in that, great. Let's try not to get too tied on joy coming from the destination
Yeah.
of graduation, of employment in different ways, of money. What if we just try to come back to the moment more, come into our body more, have some deep breaths, say a prayer if you need to, whatever it is, to kind of ground yourself, to really own that moment and appreciate it for as much as it is or can be appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's so well put.
Well, you're speaking to something I'm very passionate about, and I'm all about it in this life. If I live to, I don't know, 130, let's say it, I'll be the oldest now. Maybe I'm getting a little too full of
I don't
myself.
know. They say these days it will be possible, so we'll see.
That's it. Those are the subconscious messages I've heard in the last few years of like this idea that we can live to 130. Oh my gosh, there's privilege in that. There's luck in that. There's so much in that. But our generation, with healthcare moving in the way that it is, living, in Canada and so on, and being careful with our wellness in general, that could be a reality. So,
Oh, as you're saying this, it's making me think about like time versus anything else. Like in Punjabi, in the second language that I speak, they say "asi pure ho gaye," meaning like we have been complete, right? So someone passed, say "oh pure ho gaye," meaning that person has been completed. And so sometimes we want to put a timeline or an age on it, but it's really just completion. And so, can you live your life to completion? What would that look like, right? If you were to be complete.
what, but I love that. And at the same time, I'm like, is complete passing with a life well lived?
Yeah, I guess we get to define individually. Okay, what would that even feel like? What would that mean for you?
Right.
That's getting all existential, and I love it. Very
Is
gestalty.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, it's subjective. Where who says that that's a life well lived?
Mm-hmm.
And that idea thus may be completely subjective to their human experience and what they think is a life well lived and complete.
And the soul's journey, like
Right.
what was the lesson that, I think sometimes consciously we try to sort of figure that out when it sometimes is not, it's not even like our work, right? It's so fascinating, that whole concept of how to live and what that looks like, and the grief and the passing, all of those things, which actually, you know what, the grief and loss class, um, I remember being in that class and starting to deal with those topics head on. And those were topics that I'd never really spoke about or dealt with head on. And so a lot of this is Rhodes just sort of breaking that mind open, right? And having these like deep conversations in groups. It's like, whoa, those things don't leave you, right? Those are not conversations that you ever forget.
I totally agree. They hit your soul, they hit your heart. They don't just go into your head and out the other side, and you don't really ever think about them again.
Yeah.
the Rhodes offers such an experimental, hands-on and practical experience to allow those types of conversations to come up naturally and happen, and often have you feel a certain kind of way, because you might not be feeling great when we're talking about existentialism and the fact that you're going to die, and maybe your belief is that the soul will go on.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that alone might bring up a lot within someone, but it's important to help you hold space and learn to hold space for that in you and thus your client. Because if we're constantly thinking of the fact that, okay, you're going to be in the counseling chair, you're going to be the counselor, and your client's going to come in and say all of these things, how are you going to feel yourself about it so you can hold space for their feelings about it?
Absolutely. It's fascinating because being in the chair and supporting someone sitting across from you that might actually be navigating something that you haven't personally experienced, and you don't have to have personally experienced everything in order to support someone. But the fact that there's so much ground that was covered in visiting all these different areas, there's a comfort around saying, there's no thing that this person can bring up that I haven't had to meet, at least within myself, right? And I think that's what kind of sets apart, counselors in the industry. It's like your level of comfortability in certain spaces and certain dialogues.
Absolutely. You nailed it. I'm going to end it there by saying, for anyone listening, how can they connect with you, work with you, or see you to help them
Yeah.
help themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main place that I live is on Instagram, and they can find me at One Truth Wellness. They can also type in my name somewhere on Google, Harjit Tiara, and the clinics that I work at will also pop up. But I also do have those links available for one-on-one counseling support in my Instagram bio. So if people want to take a look, they want to explore, they want to book a consultation even, they're welcome to visit me at One Truth Wellness.
Amazing. I love that. And with that, we'll put that in the description of the podcast, the YouTube posting, and so on, so you can be reached in the event that people feel called to connect with you in whatever way. With all of that, I wish everyone super well. My name is and has been Jameson, and thus you can also reach me at fullwelljameson.com in the event that you're pulled to any of my services or want to check me and what I do out. And that, we wish you all a wonderful and beautiful, blessed day and all those good, amazing things. So be well. See you.
Thanks, Jameson.